Hello and welcome to 30 welcome to Tell Me About Your Game, the podcast where we interview new board and tabletop game designers about the projects that they're working on. And today we have Yuri, the creator of 33 Seconds of Chaos. Yuri, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your game? What's the elevator pitch?
Sure. 33 Seconds of Chaos is a party game where you try to get the rest of the players to guess a word, but there's some restrictions about how you can do it. Some of them are a little improv-y, like you might be doing a movie announcer voice, but sometimes they're a little bit harder, like you can't use adjectives, only verbs and nouns. And then sometimes there's duels. So, yeah, that's
Okay.
my elevator pitch.
So, so why'd you decide to make the game? What was your inspiration for it?
So technically, my daughter made the game, or at least the original seed of the game. Um, I play board games, party games, and stuff with them. So one day she was like, "Oh, I made this board game," and I was like, "That's amazing. Let's play it, right?" And it was actually a board game at that point. Like you would roll a dice and you would move, and then you would get a word, um, and we played it, and it was fun. But like right away, my designer brain was like, okay, so it doesn't need to be a board game, but we can do X, Y, and Z. And like me and her and my youngest started brainstorming on like, well, oh, we can try this restriction, we could try this other duel, right? So we started getting into it just for fun. And then at some point, we're driving up to my in-laws, and she's kind of in the background. We're talking about stuff, and she's like, "Hey, can we like sell this game?" And I was like, "Well, let me research it. Let me find out how it works." And down the rabbit hole I go. So now, 5 months later, I'm at cons playtesting, and yeah, it's been a ride. So,
I mean, that's a great story. I mean, first off, I hope your daughter's going to get some residuals if
of
you do sell
course,
the game.
of course,
Is she getting
co-designer
a designer?
credit.
I was just going to ask you, she's getting a designer credit. Perfect.
Of course.
Something I haven't thought to ask you before. Why 33 seconds? Why that
Is it?
specific number?
At first, I was thinking 30, but then I was like, yeah, that's not chaotic enough. So 33 seconds was born. So yeah, that's just been kind of like a fun little Easter egg for people to ask.
And I have to say, I think it actually does roll off the tongue a little bit better than 30
Yes,
seconds. 33 seconds sounds I think feels a little bit better. So
for
I
sure.
was just curious about that. Who's the audience here? Who'd you make this game for, other than your daughter?
Yeah. Um, the three kind of groups that I envision and what I've seen in playtesting has been like families, obviously board game night or just game night or whatever. Um, Folks during their board game, like before, in the middle of board games or whatever, like a little transitional game. And we've gotten a ton of feedback that teachers find this like, hey, this is like a perfect Friday end of day game, like to get the students like interacting, engaging. And I think they also are driven a little bit, it's a word game at its core,
Right.
right? So I think they're teachers, they like that kind of a thing. So that's not something I thought of initially, but it just kept coming up during playtests. So yeah.
Okay. Were there any board games or maybe even video games that you drew inspiration from? Was there anything that you looked at and kind of said, that's a mechanic or an idea that might fit into my game?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those like, what is it? Good artists borrow, great artists steal. The original idea for the game, as designers do, my daughter accidentally invented a game that already existed. I think the original restriction was single syllable words, which is essentially the poetry for Neanderthals. Um, and we kept that restriction because it's really fun, but then we added, like 50 more. Um, we've also borrowed very lightly from Coyote, which is another Exploding Kittens game, for some of the coordination duels. But a lot of it also came from Just like dexterity games. We have a duel called table cornhole, very obviously borrowed from cornhole, except you play it with little bean bags in your house. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's been a ton, and especially the improv prompts. Like, I'm a big Dropout TV fan. I don't know if folks are familiar, but it's a streaming service. They do a lot of improv type content. So I wasn't lifting things whole cloth, but it's certainly inspired by that spirit of improv in some senses. So as you do, you just kind of absorb things as you consume media or games or whatever. And I think a lot of it like came out, but in interesting combinations in my game, which hopefully makes it unique.
Right. Okay. Um, so another question I have is that, as someone who's designed a couple of games myself, um, I've always had some core design principles. And, I've had games that started looking one way, like I had a card game that ended up turning actually into a semi-abstract board game. But the core design principles behind it were still there and were still recognizable. What were the core design principles behind 33 Seconds of Chaos? What were your non-negotiable includes when you were working on the game?
Uh, that's a great question. There was a couple that came up initially, like when I told folks about it. Some people were like, "Well, maybe the duel should be a separate game and the prompt should be a separate game." And I've seriously considered it, but at the end, like it was the interplay between the two that I think either one would be fine, but I think together it really meshes. The other thing I did was I actually built myself a framework for what makes a good prompt and what makes a good duel. And that really let me, because you have ideas like, and some of them are good and some are not good. And that having that framework made it so that I can kind of evaluate against that. I know that's a little more abstract, but for duels, it was like, well, there has to be a clear winner in a duel, right? Like it can't be up to the judge, like who did improv better, right? And while that's fine for some games, like that's not what I wanted in my game, right? So like that was a big principle. There has to be a way to have a clear winner. For prompts, it was like, well, this prompt, if you do it, if it's funny, that's great. Is it funny more than once? Right.
Mm.
And there was some that I ended up cutting because it was like, oh, that would be funny, but would it be funny the third time somebody does it? Right. And for some of them, I was like, oh, yeah, for sure. And for some of them, I was like, no, absolutely not. Cowboy was one, right? Like how many, it's just gonna be people repeating the word partner, right? So I wanted the improv prompts to be doable by people that aren't good at improv, right? It was one of those. I almost want it to be. I don't bill it that way, but I always want it to be an introduction for folks to just get a little bit more comfortable, like improving and like getting slightly out of their comfort zone, right? I didn't want to throw them into the deep end of the pool, but I think people can be funnier than they think they are. So I wanted my improv to be accessible, if that makes sense.
I
As you
think
can
that
tell,
does
I
make
thought a
sense.
lot about it.
And I think I suspect everyone's kind of got some ability to improv, but it's like you said, they're not comfortable with it. But I have a feeling that once winning is on the line, suddenly people are willing to do a little bit more than they might be otherwise. When it's the question between winning and losing the game, like, okay, I can talk like a cowboy if it means I might win the game.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, I try to make them not so uncomfortable that folks would be like worried about it, but enough so that like it's fun. So you gotta walk that line.
Okay, I can definitely see that. What do you think are, I mean, there's a lot of word games out there. There's a lot of games that encourage people to perform, even if you go back to like the very originator of it, which, like charades.
Yep.
What separates your game from those other? What are the unique mechanics that give 33 Seconds of Chaos its identity?
Right. Um, so there's I think a couple of things. One of the things is I wanted the challenge slash difficulty to be an interplay between the words, like the cluing, right, and the fact that there's some sort of restriction. So marrying that, because a lot of games will just have either really hard words or like very specific restrictions, and I wanted variety. Like I wanted every round to feel, yes, structured but different, right? If you're playing charades, the content is different, you're doing a different word, but it's basically the same restriction. That's the same case with Pictionary or whatever. It varies a little bit once you get into like monikers and taboo, but it's still like the same structure, and I wanted to shake that up a little bit. And again, I draw a lot of inspiration from improv, so it just made natural sense to like add that. Yeah. And then of course adding the dexterity stuff's always fun, because
who doesn't like
flinging beanbags across your table?
Right. That's right. There are a couple of dexterity games in the cards. So a related question maybe is, sometimes as designers, we come up with mechanics that we think are very, very interesting. And then it gets into the game and it turns out not to be fun. So where is the fun in your game? I feel like your game is actually a problem. This is probably a pretty easy one to answer, but where's the fun in your game, and that's going to keep people coming back to it?
So one thing I really, really love during playtests is watching people's faces when they read the prompts and like hearing them chuckle, right? As they're like, oh, okay. Like, and then start thinking about how they're actually going to do the word, but like seeing that reaction when they laugh, when they see a prompt, right? Because, some of them, yeah, are thinky, but some of them I think are quite funny. If I can say, a compliment to myself. So there's like that aspect of you seeing that, but also it's that everybody else now gets to watch a performance. And then when a duel hits, right, like you get that like rush of competition, right? Like two people are squaring up and they're either like racing to name something, or they're rolling their little cylinders or spinning coins or whatever, right? So I think it's just kind of a little bit, it's a little bit, if I can say this, like the game almost has a little bit of ADHD built into it, right? It's like you think you know what's happening, and then it will like go sideways and it will go here and it will go, but it just doesn't let up for the 3 rounds, which is kind of how I like my party games, right? Like, from what I've seen, like the 3 rounds go really quick, even with like 8 people. There's always something different going on. So by the time you're done, you're like, you thought it was quick, even if it took you 25, 30 minutes.
So you've talked about duels a few times. Could you just talk briefly about what a duel is, and maybe mention what your favorite duel card in the game is?
Sure. Yeah. So the core concept of the game is you have to get everybody to guess a word, but sometimes you'll draw a showdown card, which means you get to draw from the duel deck. And the duels, there's kind of a mix of dexterity games, like I mentioned, the little beanbags, there's cylinders, coins, and word games where, like, for example, Theme Blitz is a great one where you have to name 3 things in a category before your opponent, right? And it's one of those things where like, oh, I know how breakfast foods work, and then your brain just blanks out. And table cornhole, I think, is one of my favorites, just because like the satisfying like sound of a beanbag hitting the table. Another one that I really, really love is called Monster Mash, which is a coordination duel, lightly inspired by Coyote from Exploding Kittens. Basically, the judge will call out either vampire, so everybody has to go like this, Frankenstein, you have to go like this, or werewolf, you have to go like this. But the judge can vary the pace, the order, right? They might say Frankenstein 3 times in a row and switch up to werewolf, and it just watching people try to follow, and then at some point you just watch somebody's brain just crunch and they just do the wrong move, and it's fun every time.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously 33 seconds is very much driven by cards. It's entirely a card game. So
yes,
let's take a
yes, yeah, for the most part.
Let's take a look at some of the cards.
Absolutely.
Okay. So right now we have a word card, which has 12 words on it: treehouse, sandcastle, dollar bill, snowman, running shoe, llama, haircut, axe, beard, waterbed, makeup, and lunchbox.
Yes.
So how does this work?
So it used to be that the person after you would just call out a random number. But once I got to 12 words on a card, because some things changed as I was playtesting, I was like, you know what? I like D&D. I like D12s. So now you get to roll a 12-sided die to choose which word you're going to be using.
Okay, so the person who draws the card doesn't get to choose that. It's completely random.
Yes.
Okay, just to add to the chaos, I guess.
Absolutely.
So then we have challenge cards. And so this one is called Villain Monologue. So once someone gets a word, then they get the prompt. Yes. So explain how that works.
Yeah, so for that one, let's say it was sandcastle. All you really have to do is try to give clues, but as if you're maybe explaining your villainous plan to the hero before you murder them or whatever. Yeah, and you just start trying to clue folks in, but while explaining. Lots of people try to do the muahaha voice, which I always enjoy.
So not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. If you got Sandcastle and Villain Monologue, how would you get that across? Give us a show, Yuri.
All right, let me limber up. Well, you see, the way I'm going to attack it is with waves, right? If a wave hits this thing, it's all over, right? And the kids are screaming, "Mommy, mommy, it's falling down." And by that point, folks are like, especially with 8 people, folks are just shouting different things. And I feel like at that point, once the kids are screaming, Sandcastle comes up.
Okay. All right, great.
I would say 90% of the time, which is kind of how I like it, folks don't hit the 33-second limit, which I don't think I mentioned, but it's kind of implied by the name. So unless it's a particularly difficult combination, which is kind of where I want the difficulty to be of the game.
Yeah. So you want people to succeed most of the time, but still to be that risk that it's not going to happen.
Absolutely. Because if there's no risk, right? If there was no timer, then it's like, sure, like, yes, it would still be fun, but it becomes less of a game, right? And more of an activity, which I'm always wary of when you're designing a party game. You want to make sure it's still a game, or at least I do. I know that's not everybody's design philosophy, but I still want it to be challenging. I still want there to be a little bit of a competition. Like you can win. You don't have to care about winning, but you should be able to win.
Right. Okay. No, that makes sense. And I think without the timer also, you'd have, when would you stop giving the guesses? It would have to, and you're right, it would be an activity, which could be fun, but one of your other core design principles is this is a game that you can win or lose. And while there's chaos, there are still some rules that need to be followed.
That's exactly right, Jeff.
So as you're going through this deck, you will also come upon the showdowns. So what happens when this little guy pops up with the showdown?
So you grab from the Duel deck, and as you might notice, there is some stuff on the bottom that everybody always asks about. That is categories for some of the duels. Like the top one, or I guess bottom one, if you're looking correctly, is one called Scavenge, which was actually the original duel my daughter came up with. literally you have to run in your house and find something from that category. And then there's categories for theme blitz, alpha blitz. My partner came up with the idea of star blitz. You do a first name, and then people have to name famous people with that first name, right? First to 3 wins. So that's where those categories live.
Okay, yeah, this one has a spring, famous people, junk drawer items, and Lisa.
Yes, Lisa Kudrow. Yeah, and then you just keep going until you hit 3.
Got it. Okay,
Yep.
so then there is the duel. So
Yes.
the duel that we have here is the alternating alpha blitz. How does that work?
So for alternating alpha blitz, I have almost every single one of these like category ones, except for scavenge, has an alternating version where instead of racing for 3, you're going back and forth until one person can't do it within like a 5-second count. So for alpha blitz, the judge would name a letter, right? So it would be like C, and then the category might be sports items, right? So one person would call out a word, the next person calls out a word until one of them can't. That's pretty much, they're simple. It's just when you're under pressure, you will eventually fail, which is the fun of it.
And we're going to see that briefly in some of the videos. And someone who shall remain nameless ends up failing a fairly basic challenge.
I'm the someone.
But what I think is interesting that I haven't seen in other games like this is, or maybe a few other games where there's an interaction between the duel challenge card and then the actual duel itself. So it's the combination of those two cards that fully define what you need to do. It's not just one card tells you everything. So you've got a tremendous number of combinations that you might have to deal with.
That was very much another. I definitely didn't mention the guiding principles. That was definitely. I wanted the game to be. It's not infinitely replayable if you start talking numbers, but it's like up there, right? You have 12 words per card. You have a bunch of these category cards. So depending on the combination of the duel and the category card, like there's a lot of replayability. So I wanted people to be able to pull this out, every week and still have a great experience and not run out of, word cards or whatever, right? So, and just the combination of the word and prompt, like you might even repeat a word, right? I've seen it because I've been running a ton of playtests. I've seen the same words come up, but it will typically be with a different prompt. So it's a different experience anyway. So.
Right. Okay. Yeah, no, it's a very interesting. It makes me think of back, and I'm going to age myself slightly here, back in the days of Trivial Pursuit, where suddenly you'd start pulling the same question cards. And even though there's, I think, 5 or 6 questions per card, eventually you start getting the same questions. So
Yes.
part of I can see the appeal of this is, as you said, you may get the same word card, but you're going to get a different prompt. So the number of combinations is just really, it is pretty astounding. I don't even want to do the math on it.
Same. It's too late for math.
And then finally, we have the mass duel cards. And the one we had is the one you mentioned earlier, Monster Mash. So you briefly described it earlier. But if I were to draw a Monster Mash, tell me what happens then. That card gets drawn. What happens next?
Yeah. So mass duels, it's something I came up with maybe a month and a half ago. Because before I just kind of had the duels, but then I was like, I wonder if I can do some that just involve the whole table, because why not? So in that particular one, folks would do the Monster Mash, but each next person does a move and then everybody has to do it elimination style, right? So somebody might go werewolf, but if you did Frankenstein, you're out. And it keeps going around until one person is left.
Okay.
That was always fun too. That actually happened. That got pulled. I was at a playtest yesterday and that got pulled, and that was a great time.
Yeah, and again, it keeps to your core, to one of your core principles. Like everyone's involved. Like you don't spend a lot of time sitting around waiting to do something.
Yeah, the downtime in a party. I mean, downtime should be avoided in a lot of games. I know sometimes it's not possible, but for a party game, it really, really, unless you can't avoid it, you should not have downtime.
Right. Agreed. I mean, obviously, for some of the heavier strategy games, unavoidable, but it would be death in a party game.
Yep.
Okay. So those were the cards, and I think we can definitely see a lot of the potential for this game. So I understand that 33 Seconds of Chaos is going to be launching soon. Is that correct? No, that's
Soon as
Bananarchy. Never mind.
yes, soon is relative. Our what we're currently doing is playtesting because I want this to be as smooth as possible. It already plays really well, but as you know, the more you playtest, like you're gonna find edges to sand off, and I want it to be I want it to be playable at a party when folks have had a few, and I still want it to be fun and smooth and totally work. The other thing we're doing is we're building a community. You know, email list, Discord, Instagram are kind of my three things that I'm trying to build. We're looking early next year to do a Kickstarter. But meanwhile, we're hitting the cons. I'm going to be at Dexlight in Morristown, New Jersey at the end of this month. I'm going to be at AutoCon, which is in somewhere in New York, at the week after. There's a few other cons, I think, in the fall. I know I'm going to be at Metatopia. Definitely going to try and make it to PAX U because it's down the street from me and it's one of the big ones. Yeah, so that's kind of the game plan for the next few months.
Okay, great. So if somebody wanted to learn more about 33 Seconds of Chaos, there are multiple links in the show notes for them to visit, including, I believe, a website, a Discord, and an Instagram.
Yeah, I would say if you find yourself a lot on Instagram and you want to see how shenanigans, we do duel videos, we do prompt videos, all kinds of kind of fun clips. Head on over to Instagram. If you want to help shape the game and maybe you have duel ideas or prompt ideas or you want to help playtest, Discord is absolutely the way to go. You'll have direct access to me. I'm on Discord all the time. I know some folks do Facebook groups. Discord is my jam. And then if you simply want to try the game, I have a print and play version and a pass and play version where you just take your phone and you pass it around the table. It acts like cards. So head on over to the website. There's a little email sign up. You hit that, and all the links will get emailed to you. You can download it right away. I have 8 different kinds of PDFs, low ink, A4, letter, everything, and then of course the pass and play, which you can literally play tonight.
Okay, that's great. Yuri, thank you so much for coming on. I highly encourage everyone to check out all of the available information that will be in the show notes. And if you want to continue to support new independent board game designers, please like and subscribe to Tell Me About Your Game. We have a large cast of designers who we'll be interviewing over the next several months. So Yuri, thank you again. And everyone have a great day.